Database DevOps with Graham McMillan.
The Azure and DevOps podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using the latest in .NET, Azure, AI, and DevOps. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. The show is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a full-service software architecture and engineering firm. Find them at www.clearmeasure.com. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast and deliver quality and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. My guest today on the show is Graham McMillan. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Redgate Software, where he leads the teams behind the industry-leading database DevOps tools. And before Redgate, he has multiple decades of experience in complex projects and leadership oversight at many companies, including Elsevier, IBM, Sun, BEA, Oracle, among others. He's also a two-time round-the-world yachtsman, bringing some hard-earned leadership experience from some of those most demanding physical environments on Earth. But I'm excited to have him on the show. So, Graham, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Jeffrey. It's great to be here. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everybody who's listening. It's great to be here. Thank you. Privilege.
Oh, great to have you on the show. I've used Redgate products for, has it been 2 decades? A long time. And I know many listeners on the show do as well. And I want to get into that. But before we dive into those bits, just so the listeners can get to know you a little bit more. You've been in the software world for a long time, in technology for a long time. What is it about technology and software and computers that just has that continual, grip on you where you've kind of stuck with it?
I think its curiosity has always driven. How does that work? Why does that happen? What is the thing that we can solve with technology? It's just so exciting. And I've been in lots of projects. As you said, I started my career a long time ago. I won't say exactly how long ago. It's embarrassing now. It's starting to get embarrassing how long ago that was. I was in a DevOps team back in the day, taking PL1 programs from engineers and loading those into mainframe systems and making sure they worked. And so even back in the mid-90s, there was still that concept of the need to roll out capabilities. But how was that going to transform the business? And how was that really going to solve problems for our customers? And that was really the most interesting thing, that ta-da moment about, wow, I never thought they were going to do that. Or I didn't even know that was a thing in industry. And I had, through my consulting years, the opportunity to work on many varied projects in the usual industries, but also in things like national infrastructure. So the fire service in the UK, really interesting, difficult problems about moving fire engines around the country. And I just love those difficult problems and how you could solve those and bring new ideas in. And then I spent some time working at Elsevier, one of the largest scientific publishers in the world. And interesting to see how data and technology embraces what is quite a fundamental industry in the world, and how new technologies are really disrupting that, and how you just don't expect this super tanker of scientific discovery to be disrupted by technology, but it is, and we see that all the time. And I think it's just great to be in the eye of that storm, which goes to, maybe that's where I like to be anyway, because with my sailing experience, it's fun bouncing across the ocean, and part of what I learned from bouncing across the ocean was how to work in teams and how to have a really clear vision about what you're trying to achieve, and how different teams are made up of different individuals, and getting the best out of those people, having clear goals. I brought back into my leadership of engineering teams, and that's been great as well to go on that journey. And so now I'm working much more closely with my product partners and seeing how we can drive a business like Redgate to help our customers. What do they need from us? and make a really fulfilling environment for my teams to work in, but getting very close to customers, understanding their lived experience and your audience's lived experience about the day in, day out experience of a DBA, of a developer trying to wrestle with databases, trying to wrestle with test data, all in a compliant environment. And those compliance needs are just getting bigger and bigger. So seeing how we can help customers in that is really, really important.
Well, speaking of the customer's lived experience and how that experience has changed over the years, you've got the perspective of how the needs of database-backed systems and the people who keep them running, design them, build them up, change. There's a lot of new listeners all the time, and a lot of new software professionals coming into the industry all the time that never experienced what it was like, say, 20 years ago, or heck, in the late 90s, and all the changes in between. So, from your perspective, and of course we can't go back super far, but what problems, from your perspective, are pretty much solved now? We used to wrestle with them, but they're pretty much solved now in the database world. And how should the young people, what solutions should the young people be reaching for by default rather than accidentally reinventing the wheel?
That's a great question. I mean, I think so much of what I think about in terms of infrastructure, you start at the lowest level. Almost everything has been solved already in some way, shape or form, right? Your ability to upload a JSON file and that's your database. Okay, you can really abstract so much away from the needs to think about those things. And I think the consistent piece is, do you want to invest time in this thing, or can you find somebody who has done it already? Is this going to be business differentiating for me to invest in absolutely understanding how the electrons are flowing across the silicon, right? And some people really do desire those microsecond advantages, but other people don't. So don't waste your time on the things that you don't need to waste your time on. And even to the point of, like, do I need to design a schema, right? There may already be a schema out there for my business domain that will be good enough for me to start with. And you may even be able to find cloud-hosted implementations of that schema. So it's just so fast to get going these days with those things. You don't have to worry about those. And understanding, I'm a great believer in using the data to drive your business outcomes. And can you get the data to tell you whether you're hitting the needs of your customers, whether it's uptime or security or resilience or disaster recovery? What are the things there that you can test and prove that this is good enough? Or should you actually then go deeper and scratch back some of those layers and say, I need to appreciate how these queries are running within this database? And something that the Redgate's been doing for a very long time is getting really into the deep guts of SQL Server for such a long time that we've got that built up experience. And then you put it in the hands of a DBA and they can really make a database sing. But when you stand back and you've got that single pane of glass to look at across your databases, you can give that to a developer and they can get confident that what they've done is good enough for their purposes. And so I think it's like some of those things, yes, we've abstracted them away. We've taken away the complexity. But the thing that I think is still continually relevant is the fact, what problem are we solving and how do we know we've solved it? And if you can answer that question, that will lead you to guiding, do I need to get really down into the weeds of this technology to optimize for that thing? Or can I abstract away through tools and capabilities that I can find off the shelf, whether that's, and the open source movement is an incredible way to innovate super fast. And I think that's what I've seen over my career, is that open source became a bit of a hobbyist's thing, but now it is just the central way that we get innovation so fast. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's my perspective on that.
You also mentioned the DBA, and you guys do a lot of work around that space, and it's always made me curious why there are some fields in our software profession that universities seem to ignore, and I don't know that there's a degree program for a DBA. There's computer engineering, computer science, and so um, for the young people coming into the industry, they hear this term DBA, but of course that wasn't available for a selection in their university courseware. What is that role today in 2026? It's morphed over time, but what is the need now? And for somebody listening that maybe that would tweak their interest.
Yeah, I think about it as the data is the foundational piece. Okay, a bit like architecture. I was an architect for a long time. If you get the database right, everything else flows from there. And in some ways, it is the most complex engine of the whole application. We talk about blue-green deployments for applications, and people do that all the time. But then you say, oh, and I assume you're blue-green changing the database as well. And then you see people backing away from that really quickly, because that is so hard to do, is to have and maintain a constant set of traffic into the database, because as soon as you've changed the data, everything else, quite frankly, has changed around you. So there's very, very difficult to have sort of blue-green deployments for databases. You have to architect, you have to work it really hard. And so if you're curious about why that is complex, if you're curious about why that is the foundation for your applications, I think that will spark your curiosity to understand why that optimizing that is so hard. And quite frankly, you're leading the application world from the ground up. And if you want to be leading those things and having real influence on the environment, then you have to talk credibly about the data structures, the normalization, the disaster recovery, the speed of the application, the understanding how this database really works differently from that database. It's not functional programming versus object-oriented programming. There are very real ways in which data is stored and queried across Oracle, across Postgres, across SQL Server, and thinking about, well, why did people come up with that way of doing things, right? Why isn't there just one ring to rule them all? I think that sort of stuff is where you can really start to learn and appreciate and be curious about that sort of stuff. If you want to write code and build applications, that's very exciting as well. You'll really see things come to life. But it's less about in the data world. It's more about those foundational things. And I think if you look, I think about building the house, right? Once you get the foundations in, the walls come up really quickly, the roof comes on really quickly. But if you get the pipes in the wrong place, if you get the sewers in the wrong place, you get the electrics in the wrong place, everything becomes a nightmare after that. And so that same analogy is with the data world and the database world. And that's why there aren't that many people that appreciate the networking, the disk, the storage, the CPU are all coming together in the database world. And that's why it makes it really hard to teach that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. The DBAs are out there enjoying being in the muck and bullets of the applications and of business, and teaching people about that stuff takes a particular skill set, and a skill set I admire, but DBAs like to be in there making things extremely real rather than teaching people about that.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned earlier mainframe systems, and
yeah,
we seem to like our M words because we've gone microcomputers and then monolithic systems, and now we're chasing microservices, and then we had mobile that came on. But all of them need to store and retrieve data, and along the way, there's been the the patterns, the Kimball data warehouse methods, and star schema and fact tables and OLTP versus OLAP and so many different patterns. The industry has had this big conversation of legacy systems and monolith bad, must do microservices. Yeah. With the database, what is, in your opinion, how should people be thinking about database segmentation if they look in the past and those databases, they kind of got too big to manage?
Yeah, I was running an application in my previous role where we had, it was 25 years old, really interesting application where they started off with that app and the size of the data, the way they sharded the data, the way they cut it up was based on the fact that the computers they were running could only store that amount of data. So that was the choice.
Yeah.
Okay. And then eventually computers got bigger and they were able to use VMs. But unfortunately, that early decision, which was right at the time, started to creak. And we wanted to shard the data not on the model we had, but on a customer site. But the database could now support that volume of data, whereas it couldn't in the past. And so I'm a great believer in solving the problem that you have today, not the problem that you're going to have tomorrow. Because if you second guess that, you're compromising both today's implementation and the future. And so I would advise anybody to think hard about what you're optimizing for today and do that in the knowledge that somebody will come along and lean over your shoulder in a year's time and say, that's technical debt. And it is technical debt. And I believe technical debt is the hindsight. It's people coming along and applying today's view of the world on yesterday's decisions. And nobody should feel ashamed or embarrassed that today that looks out of shape, because so much has moved forward and we have to build our things in anticipation of change, not anticipating that it will last. And so I think my advice to people out there is, build for what you can see today, not for what might happen in the future.
So when it comes to, if I'm interpreting that right, when it comes to segmentation, don't try to guess or preemptively segment in a certain way. Just kind of try to observe what maybe the natural segmentations are that you observe in the present.
Yeah, I mean, we have customers who have hundreds and thousands of databases. Right? Mm-hmm. When we built our monitoring product, that was definitely about segmenting around customers. It was really, really clear. But over time, when we've got tens of thousands of databases, we'd need to think about that differently. Would we segment against database type, your SQL Server estate, your Postgres estate, your Oracle estate, right? We're not there yet, but that choice would be made on what today is, not about being able to guess where we were when we started, Redgate Monitor, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. One of the recent Redgate product enhancements was SQL Prompt and bringing in AI into the mix. And I think every technology company is trying to answer that question. How do we best apply the current era of artificial intelligence? What things are DBAs finding right now that is a useful and slam dunk application of the current large language models?
It's a great question. But DBAs are generally fairly conservative, fairly cynical bunch, right? And they don't take things up really quickly, right? They have if you get things wrong in the database world, there's weeks of pain, right? If you get things wrong in the application world, you can redeploy the app and it's okay. Mm-hmm. So there's a sort of genuine risk aversion, because if the website's down, I can redeploy it. But if I can't take transactions, that's business impacting. So Prompt AI has been a great journey for us to go on with the community and try things out and say, hey, we think this is about as far away from production workloads and production changes as we can get. But we want to work with you and figure out what sticks and what doesn't. We want to get feedback from you as to whether you like this, whether this can fit in your workflows. And particularly what we hear is experienced DBAs go, yeah, okay, some of them are bouncing off it and some of them are using it really day in. But when they say, oh, this could really help a developer build good SQL code on day one, right? And that helps the DBA because the DBA is forever having to unpick amateur, occasional DBAs SQL code in when things come through. So if it's 80% better when it finally hits a test environment, then we're going to accelerate our ability to deliver value to our customers. And so that's where we see in that particular use case, it's not the DBA that's benefiting directly, it's the developer that's benefiting directly from writing better code. And the DBA gets the halo effect because it's going to be more likely to be right first time. Now, some other things that we are doing in other products. So in our monitor product, we now have some query suggestion, query optimization. So you get a slow running query, you click on the AI sparkle, and it will show you and explain exactly what's going on with that query. And we're seeing a pretty good uptake in people pressing that button. And then we're getting good feedback to say, you know what, this worked or it didn't work. And what that's helping us do is tune the feedback, tune the responses to say, hey, what do you think now? What do you think now? Because there's so many different scenarios, there's so many different contexts that only through learning and seeing the direct feedback as to whether it was useful, will we build trust. And I think there's a trust problem. It's not a Redgate DBA problem. It's Redgate and DBAs standing around these LLMs going, well, I have no idea what it's going to tell me, right? Is it going to be nonsense? And so we all want to be standing around the LLM, looking at it and getting the responses and going, hey, you know what? We're starting to get something here. We're starting to see an opportunity to stitch together the jobs to be done. We're starting to get to see where I might find a query that's slow running. I click on the sparkle. It says, hey, Graham, we've identified that this particular query has been written poorly. We can suggest an optimization, maybe break it out, change some of the clauses. Would you like us to do that? And we could probably then feed that into Prompt AI, and that will give you a better piece of SQL. Great, okay, but that's still got to be deployed. So you could see a world then where you turn to Flyway, a deployment tool, which would then do the changes, build a migration script, take a backup script, and say, hey, Graham, do you want me to deploy this into the test environment for you? And I go, yes. So that gets deployed. It then runs the monitor prompt again, the monitor insights again, and shows you, yeah, I've fixed it. Okay, would you like me to roll it into production? So there's still that human in the loop, but so many of those other DevOps steps around alerting and rebuilding and testing and deploying are all facilitated by agents. And over time, I could see that vastly accelerating the mean time to recovery for some of those really thorny problems. And I think, we'll get to a percentage of problems that start to get dealt with very quickly because they're regularly seen. And then there'll be some that will just need that deep head-scratching expertise to go in, and we'll need to have those fire breaks between the steps to just double-check the AI. But that's our vision, that we think that agents have a place to play in the database DevOps lifecycle. And we're starting to show customers what that might look like in the future. And we're getting mixed feedback, right? People who say, no, this will never work for me. And people who are saying, yeah, I can see how in a well understood, disciplined data environment, this will work. And I think what that will drive is those companies whose data estates are a complete mess are going to really struggle to make use of agents because the agents can't reason. It's not deterministic enough for them to appreciate for the agents to appreciate what's going on. Whereas other customers who have already gone through the discipline about having good separation between dev, test, and production, about having good deployment pipelines, about good testing, about good performance testing, good alerting and monitoring, they will then be able to leverage the capabilities and be able to move faster for their customers. And I think we will see a sort of two tiers of customers emerging. Those who are really pushing the envelope with AI based on the fact that they've got their house in order, and those that are unable to do that and will forever be saying AI doesn't work for me. And it's like, yeah, okay, it's not the AI, it's you. and that's going to be harsh to hear for some customers and for some organizations. And we believe Redgate has got a place to play in supporting those gazelles who are racing off over the horizon, as well as those people who are really struggling to make sense of why it's hard to get the benefits from AI and hard to pick up the pace and be flexible and agile and deliver quickly.
Well, there's been so many problems solved over the years, and you mentioned vision. And what are the problems that our database industry still struggles with today that you're thinking about or you would love to have solved in the years to come?
The number one problem is there aren't enough DBAs. Right? Wherever I go, people are saying, Redgate, we love Redgate because it means I can go and I'm not spending Friday evening debugging code. I'm not spending Saturday redeploying code or picking through databases that are down. I'm at my kids' ball game. I'm at parties. I'm on the golf course, and that is where Redgate tools, and that's where we hear DBAs are so pressured, under so much pressure. And so that's what I believe is consistently, it's just there's not enough people to help solve these problems. And so where we can help is democratize some of the insights around pushing early warning of issues to developers. And we shift left and push the insights from a Redgate monitor to developers. If they've got access to their console, and they can deploy safely through things like Flyway and DevOps tooling into that environment, then a lot of what DBAs have done in the past, which was safe deployments, testing, looking at queries, whether they're running better, all that can be pushed to the developers and safely, such that when that segregation of duties to actually be deploying into production is less of a, stand back and push the button and hope everything's fine. There's greater confidence that things will work. And that's where I believe we can help that shift, that secular shift to making the occasional DBA be much safer in deploying code and deploying changes to production.
The occasional DBA. Yeah, every developer that needs to get data has to kind of understand those things.
Yeah. And every time somebody makes a change, they need to be confident that they're not breaking something fundamentally. And because I go back to the databases are the foundation, that they're really scared of doing that. And that, terror slows people down. And if you can provide guardrails and tools and positive signals that everything's fine, or they have a back out mechanism, then they're more likely to feel empowered to make the change. What's the worst that can happen if in 5 minutes I can roll back and pretend it never happened, right? But do that in a really clear and safe way. That's what enables people to innovate. That's what enables people to go faster. And it's the low cost to trying things out, which is a real enabler of speed.
You mentioned the guardrails, and I think of the analogy of the safety net, just to catch something's about to go wrong. Let's prevent it. Application developers have developed patterns around multiple levels of test automation, and you've got SQL test. What is the state of the art of automated testing with complex databases today?
I think it's pretty poor. I mean, we have capabilities that allow us and allow our customers to subset and mask, and so usually it's about making things smaller so they're more predictable. But what you do is you lose some of the fidelity and the complexity of data. And if you just do that manually with I'm going to take ones and A's and fill the database. That's not representative enough. So the state of the art is now looking to see how AI can help us build synthetic data sets, rule-based data sets that give you confidence that the statistical shape of the data is equivalent to production, even if it's 10 times smaller. And that helps you use less storage. It helps you understand give you confidence that your unit tests, which effectively are still being exercised by the application, just running SQL straight into the database is not representative enough. I don't believe that cutting off the application from the end-to-end test is a good practice. I believe you still need to exercise it the full stack. But what you underneath need that is a representative data set that you can trust. And you need to refresh that regularly, ideally with every branch, but certainly weekly, because we see customers who take that disciplined approach of refreshing data have far fewer production outages than those that might be refreshing, say, annually. And what I think that shows is, again, that discipline is really hard to achieve. And we've got security and compliance people saying you can't give developers production data, right? And that's a good thing. We don't want that data to leak out. We've got customers in the UK who've really suffered from that data going into the wrong hands. And so having that ability to mask PII and have statistically equivalent data sets, but we know they are safe for developers to use. That's where I think the state of the art, that's where we can invest in really to the benefit of developers and give us confidence that the changes are going to work.
So you didn't mention the names, but you've got SQL Data Generator and SQL Clone with the masking capability to solve those problems. What enhanced capabilities are you talking about there? Because it sounds like most of what you're mentioning is already in the product feature set, or am I wrong about that?
Well, we have a product called Test Data Manager, which is doing that capability to mask data in a much more predictable way and much more quickly. Yeah, SQL Clone was taking existing databases, backing them up and providing lots of instances of that. But that's not addressed the compliance risk that we're going to let PII or personal data go out of the closely guarded environments. And that's where our new capabilities are really helping customers have that confidence that the wrong data or the right data is going to into the wrong hands. So that's where we're investing quite a lot at the moment to provide this capability.
Got it. As we close up here, and look off into the future, what is your best prediction about database DevOps and database systems in general? You mentioned DBAs being hard to come by, and of course there's a lot of speculation about the changing role of the software developer and who's writing code.
Yeah.
So what are you and Redgate preparing for the years to come?
In the short term, I'm seeing everybody's AI project is turning into a data cleansing project, right? They're going, well, the AI is not working for me. It's a bit like what I alluded to earlier, is suddenly trying to work with AI at scale. And that means like everybody in the sales department and everybody in marketing can leverage your data such that it's having a genuine productivity effect across everybody. Means that the data is suddenly the seed corn, because if you get nonsense in and truth out, you just can't build a business off that. And so I think very quickly people are recognizing that your ability to have clean data in the right location. So is it migrated to the cloud? We will see huge demands on data projects before we see huge demands on AI projects. And I think people will be then looking to see, how can I deploy this data? How can I test this data? How can I monitor this data in a way that's going to then give me confidence that the AIs are operating on something that we can trust and make that scalable? So yeah, I think there's huge optimism for AI, and there's suddenly the eye of the world is then going to turn on the data that's feeding that and making consistency. And so the DBA's day has come, if you like, to stand in the sun and say, you know what, we own the data. We are the best place to give you those data sets in a way that will be you can leverage for your AI. And sure, there are other sort of unstructured data sets and documents, but relational data is still the vast majority of what we have.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Graham, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your perspective as the Chief Technology Officer of Redgate, pretty much the industry's top leader in database tools. I appreciate
you,
coming on. Yeah. And as we close up, dear listener, I just want to encourage you to keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure and DevOps podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Visit our sponsor, ClearMeasure, at www.clearmeasure.com. And on behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.